Hey guys, and welcome to Garsem Gaming.
Welcome, guys. How's it been?
You got this.
Now, today we're going to be looking at Final Fantasy VII Remake. Don't forget to like and click that notification bell. So, let's jump into it. So, for all you RPG, Final Fantasy Square fans, we have our Final Fantasy Remake. It's a remake of the 1996 Final Fantasy VII, which is, in my opinion, one of the best Final Fantasy VII, aside from Final Fantasy VII 3, that has ever
How
been
many
made.
Final Fantasy VIIs are there?
There's a lot.
So why is it still called 7?
No, it's everything is
It's like
based,
7 part 1, part 2.
No, it's not like that. It's Final Fantasy series. So like there's Final Fantasy 1, there's right up to this was the 7th game in the series. But each game is different. It has different characters, different worlds. The Final Fantasy 7 world though just went crazy. There's like how many different spin-offs, but it still carries that Final Fantasy 7 name.
Oh.
So we have our antagonist here, Cloud Strife. You look at that sword, it's almost as big as he is.
It's almost it's like bigger than he is.
No, it's a good sword.
It's like
keeps you
just
going.
barely. He has to lean forward so much just for it not to like touch the ground.
So what soldier
Yeah,
boy's
so
deal? Is
what
he
we're
one of us
seeing
now?
here with Final Fantasy
He's
is
got
that
balls,
they've
this,
gone away from the
what was his
turn-based,
name again?
you hit me, I hit
Cloud
you,
Strife.
Right.
And he isn't
put
a
in
soldier
command.
anymore.
It's more of a
Still, he's a professional,
hack and slash
unlike the
style,
rest of us.
but you still have those
I'm glad to
commands
have
that you can enter.
Cool. So it seems
is a
to be a
one-time
bit
gig.
more along the lines
When it's
of
done, we're
a
done.
whole world. Yes, the RPG styling, which is you go into a whole world, but it's more in depth than just, exploring it on a flat screen. So this is a whole new look at it.
Yes, it's three-dimensional. It's not 2D, it's not flat. If you've ever seen the original Final Fantasy VII, like, it's the same characters, it's the
Nobody do
same.
something
This
this
mission
crazy
they're
just
going
for
through right
money.
now is the same one you
They
did
may
at the
not think
beginning
you're a
of
true
that.
believer,
But
but you know
it's
what I
it's
think?
come a long way. It's like
What?
back then it was boxes and colors. Now we're actually looking at characters, 3D model characters. And another thing for those RPGers from back in the day, you did a lot of reading back in the day because there weren't voiceovers. It was
You better be worth
a character says something, you have to read it.
You make up your own use your imagination to make the voices how you feel would fit.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat when it comes to that, but you had to be reading. So it had a lot of reading that was going on when you were playing. Oh yeah, so there, look at how he looks there with that sword looking up at the Mako reactor. So we're gonna head in and see what we can get ourselves into. Like I said, there's that hack and slash style, but you can still enter your commands every now and then to kind of keep it. It doesn't take away from that. That entering your commands, you can still pause, enter your commands, but it still continues the action.
Yeah, I like that because you can still see the commands there on the bottom left that you can choose between so you could get your different combos.
Yeah.
But it's not the same in the sense that you would have to do an attack, then it goes, and then the next person does theirs, and then you're just kind of like waiting to see how much damage they do to you in order to respond and stuff like that. So now
True.
it kind of just gives you that, oh, I'm not even going to give you chance to hit me.
Well, they do fight back. It's not like they're gonna just stand there. It depends
I
on the
know.
enemy. It's not completely hack and slashy. You have to gauge your enemies, their weaknesses, their strengths. And again, it's Final Fantasy, and I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. So, I know the story, but what they've done with this game is that they haven't done the entire game. They haven't released the entire game. The initial Final Fantasy
so
VII
fast.
came out
We've got
on
company.
3 different CDs. I think I have those CDs lying around somewhere.
Okay.
So you had part 1, which took you to a point, and then it would say something like, okay, please do not turn off the system, take out the CD and put in the new CD and continue playing.
Okay.
And then you would just continue and make your save that way. I think what they've trying to do, and it's more, to capitalize on money and marketing. They split the game up into sections. So the first section is out now.
I mean, it makes sense though. From a business standpoint, you can't knock them on that.
Yeah, that is true. And just to mention, for those of you that have PlayStation Plus, this is a freebie for this month. So you get this for free. So there's no reason not to jump on. The value of PlayStation Plus versus the value of this game, it's so worth it.
Definitely worth it.
So we have Cloud still making his way through this mission. They're trying to go and destroy a reactor. You with fighting guards. It's kind of a tutorial to get you used to how the weapons work, different mechanics, your magic. Yes, there is magic. It is Final Fantasy.
I mean, what would it be without a little bit of magic with an RPG at least?
That is true. That is so true. And like I said again, there have been other RPGs that are more advanced than Final Fantasy. There was Final Fantasy 12. There's been 13. Right now, I think we're at 15 or 16 going there. And the graphics are way better than Final Fantasy 7. It's just that the story of Final Fantasy 7 is really amazing. It's one of those. I think it's one of the first Final Fantasies. This is a spoiler, okay, guys, where we have main characters dying.
Wah, wah, be warned.
Yeah, it's one of those stories. It's not just a cut and paste. You're on an adventure. Let's save some people. Let's get this over with. We have some twists and turns in this Final Fantasy.
That's so cool, though. Because, I mean, they went full out with, like, okay, there are consequences, there are this, there are that. I mean, it's not as simple as, oh, the heroes win, yay. It's, like, more depth to it than that.
Yeah, for whatever reason, this Final Fantasy is one of the most loved Final Fantasy in the entire series. For me, the only other Final Fantasy I could compare to this or even like hold a candle is Final Fantasy 3, which is actually not Final Fantasy 3.
What?
So it's very confusing. It gets confusing after a point.
You think?
Because sometimes Final Fantasy comes out in Japan and we do not get an English release for that Final Fantasy.
You better learn Japanese.
Yeah. So what happens is then when they do get the English version, they just pick up from where they left off. So if English version we had 1, even if Japan is all the way up to 4, they just go 2.
Oh, so even if they like skip out the 2 and 3, 2 and 3 in Japan, they just continue with whatever the new English version that Japan actually has as the English version too.
Yeah, because Final Fantasy 3 was a really nice story. It was somewhat similar to this, but it had a lot of intrigue. That's something I would like to see remade. I won't lie to you. Final Fantasy 3 was a really good story. Final Fantasy 7, however, came out on the PlayStation, and from day one, everybody was into it. It had hidden bosses. It had a good story. It had characters that you could find, secret characters that could become a part of your team. It had vampires. It had mummies. It had secret experiments. You name it.
It had it.
It had it.
Cool.
Yeah, so, and everybody was into it. It is one of the most loved Final Fantasies. I'm very excited to be playing this game. I think we might be seeing more Final Fantasy on the channel.
I do like it. I mean, it's something that's gonna be fun to watch. This is probably gonna be more of a you thing than me though.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's
yeah,
my thing. It's my thing.
I can feel your remorse from not having my presence. Yeah, I get the picture.
No, I'm just saying this is what I used to play. RPGs, for anybody that doesn't know, is my favorite, type of game to be playing. And over the years, I think RPGs they've come a long way. They've changed up their style. But what keeps people in RPGs, like for those of us that love RPGs, it's the story.
Yeah, anything that has a good story.
Yeah, and there's always a twist in RPGs. Like you may spend the entire game going after this one boss, only to find out that he was like this stooge for the real boss. It was like, yeah, I'm just using you. So he's not the boss. I am the boss.
He's the underling boss.
He's just like a weakling that was there.
That you didn't even have enough knowledge to know about me, the big boss.
Yeah, so these things happen. Like these guys here right now, they're going in. They're small time. He's a soldier. Now, a soldier in this universe is like specially trained, infused with Mako energy to make them super powerful, super fast, super strong. So he's a real bad man.
But bad in a good way?
It depends. It's kind of hinges on the story. A lot
so
of
you can be evil. This is what I'm hearing. You can be
when it was
evil.
built.
Yes, there's possibility for you to be evil. And
the villain
the
in
thing
me.
about this story is that as the story goes on, a lot of Cloud's backstory comes out. They've even had movies from this. There's movies like
Are you guys close?
before the game. There's movies during the game. There's a movie after the game.
This is a whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah, this Final Fantasy VII is a thing. It was
I think
a
it's
thing.
more than a thing. If they got movies, it's a movement. It's more than just a thing.
Like other Final Fantasies, it's like one game and done. Like later on in the series, you saw like Final Fantasy X, then there was 10-2. Okay, the best way to look at it is that each number in the Final Fantasy is a different world.
Oh.
So Final Fantasy 1 is world 1. Let's look at it like that. So in the Final Fantasy 7 world, like usually before this, it was like Final Fantasy 5 and you're done. Final Fantasy 3 and you're done. It then became Final Fantasy 7. Then there was a game where each character is like different characters from the main storyline had their own spin-off game.
Wow.
And it was still called Final Fantasy 7, but it was just like a subtitle like Cerebus or something. Now, we've been introduced here to the villain. Like, these guys are going to sabotage, and this guy's just watching them.
He's just there with his like, I'll just see what's going on along the road today. He's just there relaxed. Like, oh, this doesn't bother me at all.
So this guy's, you know, in RPGs you get to learn the first big bad guy you get set up as he's the villain. This is the guy. You always like, is his second in command? Is it this underling that he's always beating that we don't know why he's beating him, but the guy's just taking a licks to make everybody not know he's that powerful. There's always somebody waiting in the wing. But yeah,
For some major twist or something to
There's
kind of
always a
like
twist.
shock you and get you to be like, what?
there's always a twist. Like I said, each war, like Final Fantasy, it has Final Fantasy 7. It was just this character is like one of the most popular, most recognized, most loved Final Fantasy characters.
Cloud?
Yeah, Cloud
I'd worry less
Strife.
about the planet
There
and more
are
about the next
tons
5
of Final
seconds.
Fantasy characters.
Save
There's
this for
Lightning.
later.
She's from Final Fantasy 13. She ended up having like 1, 2, 3 games. Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13 2, Final Fantasy Lightning Returns. But she still has not drawn that amount of popular. And in her game, in that Final Fantasy 13, there were voiceovers. The graphics were close to, if not on par with this, because it was more of an advanced Final Fantasy.
Cloud do all
Okay.
the fighting.
But it still has not
There are some
garnered that
places
kind
a
of
sword
a
just can't reach.
support and love that for some reason Claude with his big sword.
Just bear with him for me.
You
Has
love a big
gotten-
sword. I mean, come on.
No, he's not the only dude to have like a big sword in Final Fantasy. It's just
Exactly. But we
Should've
just
asked for
like
more
his
money.
one.
that, yeah, he's a loved guy.
Maybe he got that whole mysterious, oh my god, misunderstood. You know, that kind of like, oh, you don't know me. Where's
Nah, his
blackmail
story
polish?
is messed up. Like depending on the way you go with this story, it's gonna be really like he has a moment where he just
It just touches your heart.
oh man,
Oh, sheds one tear.
sheds no tears. I know the story. There will be vengeance. All right, so now we're gonna be playing with Barrett. Now Barrett is a dude with a gun on his arm. Now we talked about this at some point. Anime, RPGs, You know,
Anything in Japanese
anything in
culture.
Japanese culture, well,
Artwork or any kind of creation that they do.
there's a lot of diversity. Now, Barrett is living proof of this. You know, he is big. He's a black man with a gun on his arm, shooting stuff. See him there doing his thing. He can handle those monsters at a distance.
They're always seen, because I watch a lot of anime, and they always have like a diverse in terms of like colors, complexion of persons and stuff like that. It may not always be the case that that person is a not main character, but like the main star.
Yeah.
But they are always there. They are never like, underrepresented in some industry.
Yeah, there's always, because anime by right, it's supposed to be Japanese characters, but there's always representation from Europe, Africa, America, the Caribbean. There's always that
diversity in terms of,
for some reason.
in terms of whether it is inspiration or just the use of characters or the use of items within, or different like cultures within the creation of anime.
Yeah, and one of the things we started toying with for this series is that are we gonna, it would be nice for people to see where this game came from. You know, that old Final Fantasy VII.
So that you can see it, compare it.
Well, there's no comparison. There is no comparison.
I mean, come on, to see it was like, you know, the meme where they have if you can't appreciate me at my blank, put this picture here, then you don't deserve my blank, put the other picture there. So then, like, if you can't appreciate Final Fantasy VII in its original state, then you don't deserve the remake.
No, the remake, I think I would have to a little bit well, I disagree with you. I don't a little bit. I'm sorry. I was trying to save your feelings. But the thing is, the remake, what they're trying to do is, okay, for me as a
Never said I was.
RPG,
I'm just here for the paycheck.
okay, I'm gonna say this, and you know this. There are certain game companies, game producers that once they bring out a title, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna check that out, because it's not because of the title, it's because it came from a specific place. For example,
From a specific studio.
I like Bethesda, and you know this. Anything that has Bethesda on it, I'm gonna try it. Now Bethesda,
Irregardless.
yeah, Bethesda, because they have like a standard. It's like a model. Bethesda gave us things like Skyrim, Oblivion, Fallout. Those games I would try, because it's a standard first person. It's either swords, bows and arrows, magic spells, guns, nukes, mutants. They basically have like a formula of how they do their game. So we call it the game engine. And their engine is always, okay, I'm playing a Bethesda game. This is what I'm looking forward to. If you hated it in the beginning, you're gonna hate it in the end. But if you love it,
You're gonna love it.
you're gonna love it. So once there's a Bethesda game, I'm there. I'm in. From Software, now this is debatable. While we look at this boss, it's kind of interesting that I said From Software. From Software brought us things like Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Bloodborne. That formula has stayed the same consistently throughout. And I've played a lot of Dark Souls. I'm on New Game Plus for Dark Souls 3 and 2. I'm now trying to get into Dark Souls 1 because I just got it. But once you like a company and what they're producing, you will try to play some of their games. And Square Enix, it has gone from Square Soft, Square Enix, Square. It's still Square,
Right.
and Square games we play.
Yeah.
So their formula has stayed true to form. You know, it's big story, a lot of fighting, leveling characters.
Yeah.
And I remember the other day I was on a RPG rampage trying to see how many RPGs I could play before I was stopped. But
Somehow I feel attacked by that stopped.
I was told I had a problem. I needed to
Take a break.
take a break from some RPGs.
Come up with some oxygen.
Yeah.
This was all about coming up for some oxygen. I was not saying, oh, you have a problem. I was just saying, how about this? Why don't you eat something? Why don't you relax a bit?
Yeah, I was in a zone. That's how much I love RPGs. But this boss here, he is.
So what's your
It's basically
genius?
for them. It's basically they have the story already. What I'm looking forward to see in the remake, because I'm noticing that they're probably tweaking the story a little bit.
It wouldn't be
You know,
much of a weapon
they're trying to
down
bring the
easy.
game to a newer generation.
Which
Those
is
persons,
expected.
yeah, those persons that don't want to grind, that they love their hack and slash. They're trying to introduce you to
Less
Final
talking, more
Fantasy.
shooting.
It still has those RPG elements for those of us that love that, but it kind of brings a lot more of the action and
Oh,
cinematography to the game.
yeah. So what would you say, like in this, we've seen that you can play as different characters. Is it a case that you can control to change between, or is it that the game tells you when to control?
No,
to
you
change?
control. If you notice what, well, we were talking over a lot of what is going on here. It gives direction. Right now we're still in somewhat of a tutorial,
Right.
so you can choose what character you're going to be using. So by pressing left or right on the joystick, it tells you who you're playing with. Now, if you want, you can even give commands to characters that you're not controlling so that they can do stuff while you are playing.
So it still brings back that aspect that you would have in the original game
Yeah, it still
and
gives
other
you
Final
that.
Fantasy games from before this.
Yeah, that aspect comes back. But what it tries to do, you know, it's trying to keep up with a lot of games that we have out there. There's a lot of games like that we would have reviewed, you know, where the action is in real time. It doesn't slow down. And this was something from the original game. You actually had what you call active ATB, or active time battles, where you didn't get time for it to pause for you to put in command. If you decided to pause, the computer kept going.
Oh,
So it was, we're playing, you're in, a fight starts, the fight is going. If you decide to stand there, you're gonna die.
yeah. It's gonna be like, oh, thanks for not moving.
Yeah, but this battle is one of our first boss battles, and it's looking good. It's looking all right. I'm holding up, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't
You
die.
haven't died, so
Not yet,
there is
not
that.
yet.
So based on the old game, and I know we're not there yet, but do you have, like, how many characters are you gonna be able to play with by the end of it?
All right, so there's Cloud, there's Tifa, there's Barrett, who we're seeing here. There's Vincent. There's an experimental hybrid wolf slash something.
Whoa.
Lion something. He's just called 13. There's Sid.
Think it through.
Am I missing? There's Yuffie. I think there's about 7 or more. I could be wrong, but I think there are around 7 that I could name off the top of my head.
Okay. So that's interesting.
Oh,
so
and
it's gonna be a case where you're
there's
gonna be
8.
picking your
There's
team.
this little cat thing that joins your team. And
Oh.
there's 9. There's Arret. They're mentioning that character. The 9 character has a kind of like I said, not all those characters are gonna be alive at the end of the game. There are repercussions to some of our actions.
Oh no.
There is love. There's love interest. There's a love triangle that the game has. 3 characters.
Drama.
It has a lot. It has a lot going on. And one of the things we have to notice about Final Fantasy, one of those characters I mentioned, which is something we should have said earlier. If you've never played Final Fantasy, then you're not gonna know this. Like this is you now coming into the Final Fantasy arena.
Yeah.
There's some things that always come back. The main character is always different. You start as a weakling, you don't have all your power, you go into your power, you become the strongest there is, you save the world. But in every Final Fantasy, at the beginning,
Watch the tail.
there
You don't
is
wanna be hit by that
2
laser.
characters that always turn up in
Don't get
every
hit.
Final
Take
Fantasy.
cover behind that debris.
It's Biggs and Wedge.
Who are those?
Well, from what I've read, they have some relation to the creators. They have some special place for the creators. Because even in this, at the beginning we saw 2 guys who were running with us to get infiltrate here. One is Biggs and one is Wedge.
That's the girl and the dude?
No, the girl is Jessie. The two
Right.
dudes are Biggs and Wedge. In every Final Fantasy, you play Final Fantasy 3 at the beginning. The guys that take one of the main characters as a prisoner to go and kill a village are Biggs and Wedge.
Cool.
Any Final Fantasy, Biggs and Wedge appear, and in every Final Fantasy, you can go and check this if you know it's something that is kind of cool. There is a Cid,
Take the lead.
and
Does the Cid change in terms of how they look?
yeah, Cid always is somebody different. He always changes. His role is usually the same. You meet Cid midway through the game. He introduces you to his airship.
Find cover and hunker down.
Whenever you meet Cid in Final Fantasy, that means, you know what? I'm fed up walking. I'm gonna fly.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, so a Cid character turns up in every Final Fantasy. In Final Fantasy 9, he was a king, but he still gave you airships, and he was the one that made airships. He's always the one that is making the airship. In Final Fantasy 3, he was a guy, again, with an airship. In 7, he's also a guy who does airships. In all Final Fantasies, there is a Cid.
Okay, so then it's just a matter of looking out for your next Cid in this one, I guess.
Yeah. So he always turns up. In this one, there's definitely going to be a Cid because this one still follow that model where there's a Biggs and Wedge and there's a Cid. So it's like you play a Final Fantasy, you're looking for your Cid, you're looking for your Biggs and Wedge. Now, what I'm really looking forward to see, because this boss fight, it has been going on for a while. And like I said, it's interesting. The Final Fantasy gave us the hidden boss. You know, there are those bosses where it's hard. The hidden boss in most Final Fantasy games was harder than the final boss of the game.
Okay. So it's like an Easter egg. They have many different types of Easter eggs for players to find.
Well, this was an Easter egg that most people regretted that they ever found. No, because we're talking the final boss is hard. But with this boss, you had to be at the top of your game. And this boss would just be roaming around the world. In some cases, he'd be underwater. In other cases, they'd be flying around. You just bumped into them. And you'd be like, oh yeah, this is a normal enemy outside of a big boss fight.
I could take you.
And then he does one move and your entire party is dead and you're like, what?
How did that just happen?
Yeah, so they introduced that, which was, oh, look at that cinematic. It looks so good.
Follow my lead.
But yeah, so then you're like, oh my gosh, why did I find this? Because it just killed
Yeah,
everyone.
so you found him at your own peril. It wasn't,
and
I'm
you're
gonna
probably
go
feeling
looking for
good
this.
about yourself too. Like,
yeah, at this
before
point,
it.
you know, you're like hype. You've probably killed how many bosses. You're all
Like,
on your way to the
ah.
final boss. You're like, what could stand in my way? And then you hit this character and you're like, oh, yeah, that could do it.
Yeah.
I should have just stayed where I was.
Just do my little thing. Keep on
But-
pushing.
But from what I'm seeing, it looks really good. I like the view. I like the perspective. I like the way that it's being done.
I like the graphics on it. It looks really good.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you know, everything comes up. Your XP, it's really streamlined. Look at this. It's like a cinematic experience all the way through. In the older Final Fantasy games, you only got that cinematic at cutscene. This we're getting it all the way through the playthrough. I like it. I like the way it's going.
It
No.
looks really interesting. I like it. I would love to see more of it.
Yeah, I think it's something we're gonna explore on the channel. I know I'm gonna be playing it. I'm sorry, other games that I play, but maybe put aside for a little bit.
Yes.
We've got to move.
The remake, I did play the demo, and I was yeah. But PlayStation Plus this month did not disappoint.
Yeah, they did not.
For me, anyway, they came up with some really great games. It kind of sucks that you do have to have a VR to play Farscape or Farpoint or whatever it's called. But other than that, I could care less.
Yeah, but I mean, what are you gonna do? You just gotta appreciate what you do have and just not focus on what you don't, basically.
Yeah, and this is really good.
And would you even be giving that game the time of day with this game, with Final Fantasy being there anyway?
So Final Fantasy, you're gonna be played. You will be played a lot.
Will be conquered.
Oh,
Need a light?
yeah. It may conquer me somewhere along the line.
Let's go.
Well, to be seen. So I'm guessing you're thinking that we may be bringing this on.
Yeah, to be honest, I want to play it. I'm loving the
Regardless,
graphic.
you're gonna be playing it.
Whatever happens, it's gonna be played. It's gonna be a part
It will
of.
be played.
Yeah, it's gonna be a part of our lineup. We may even count this as our first episode, and then we just basically continue from here. Who knows?
Who knows? Let's see how this goes. And then maybe you'll be surprised next week with an episode. Or maybe we'll go back to something else.
Yeah, I'm liking looking into these games that come out. There's a lot of games you could probably look at and how they look and how they feel. But I think we're gonna wrap it up here, guys.
Hero.
So this was our look at Final Fantasy. Don't forget to subscribe and click the
Final
notification
Fantasy
button.
VII
Remake.
Remake.
So enjoy your
Come
week.
this way.
Enjoy your weekend.
This way.
Peace. This is Garsem Gaming.
Bye, guys.